What's up, everyone? Nima here, and today I want to talk about video game companies who don't want money. There are a ton of video games that we would love to see ported over to new consoles or expanded upon. Hell, in some situations, just give us a sequel, but give us more of what we love. And sometimes we tend to think maybe these video game companies and developers don't understand how much we love certain games that they've made. And of course, Mario RPG always comes to mind as one of those games that I think if they just remastered it a little bit, put in a little bit of work, don't even have to spend that much time on it, and if they ported it over to the Nintendo Switch, they could get $40 easy. And it would very, very little amount of investment on their part just to cash in. And I know that this leads into the conversation about the virtual console and what's going on with the online service for the Nintendo Switch, which has gotten even worse. Potentially a I don't know a situation where we are getting games that most of us have never even heard of. And they may have put themselves in a position where they outprice themselves because their subscription fee is $20 a month or $20 a year rather, and they don't want to give us these kind of games. They don't want to release a Mario RPG or Chrono Trigger or things like that on that service because they know there's more money to be made. But the problem is there's we're not getting the game and they're still not making that money. And it's right there for them. And there's so many of these games I can think of that just come to mind. Paper Mario for the Nintendo GameCube is another game that I think about as I've never played it, but everyone says that's like the quintessential Paper Mario experience. Obviously, Mario RPG, as I stated before, um, a game that I would like to see done because it's kind of I don't know special to me is Super Tecmo Bowl, and not the original. I want the sequel, if you will, that came out a few years later for the Super Nintendo system. And obviously, I think one that most people would agree with is Earthbound. The whole series. I mean, I know there was talk about Mother 3, which is what Earthbound is in Japan. It's called Mother. Um, that whole series is something that we really missed out on. Earthbound was released here, but it didn't do so great, and it became one of those like cult classic games that years after it released, people realized how great it was, and we never got a re-release. We never got anything more. And I just sit there and look at that series and I'm like 40, 50, hell, for 3, maybe 60. You could easily make on a person like me, you could make $130 if you just re-release these. And again, a little bit of touch up and you could charge that extra cost if you just directly ported them from the NES and the SNES respectively with games like this. You could do 15, $20 and you do very little work. And I'm one of millions of people who would give all that up just to play some of these old games. But the big one that I want to talk about is a series that just recently talked about a pixel remaster. And they talked about 1 through 6 being re released, my favorite series of all time, Final Fantasy, and it's coming to PC and mobile devices. So they worked their ass off to remaster these games, to go over them, restructure them, and they're not going to release it on an actual console? They're going to release it on PC and mobile. That is ridiculous. Fans of this series love, truly, truly love these games and have bought them once, twice, 3 times, and will do it again. I own most of these games on my phone already. So will I buy these? Probably, but I don't know. It actually that's hard to say. I don't know if I actually will, since I already own them on my phone. It just seems ridiculous to me that you have so many old school Final Fantasy fans, people who are just getting into Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy 14 and 7 remake are blowing up, and there's a lot of people who've never experienced these, and they could go back and play like my favorite Final Fantasy game of all time, Final Fantasy 4, or was 2 when it released here in America. That really captures what Final Fantasy was and why we loved it. These intriguing storylines. Um, it really showed that video games were more than just for kids. There was so much to them, and they're just releasing on PC and mobile. And if they just released these games on the Nintendo Switch and broke them all up, honestly, I think they could get $30 a piece for each game. And I don't know if they've been paying attention, because part of the reason I talk about this is there was a conference with the developers, and they said, well, if there's enough demand for it, we will release these for other consoles. I don't know if they got the memo, but the Nintendo Switch is one of the highest grossing consoles this year. The Nintendo Switch is crushing it in numbers. People who are gamers, people who are not gamers, people of all walks of life are grabbing the Nintendo Switch. It For a while it was hard to find a Nintendo Switch, and you have money just sitting there. You have people who are hungry for new games, hungry for reliving these experiences or trying them for the first time. And what do we get? We get nothing. We get left out in the cold. Nah, we're not going to take care of the Switch, even though this is the perfect place for it. The mobile gamers, yes, there are on record more people who play video games on their phone, but they don't play games, not games. They play time fillers. The Angry Birds, your Doodle Jump, the 1,006,000 version of matching up bubbles to make them pop, or the classic own and conquer your own land and only pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars to get any power in this game kind of game. That's what people play on their phone. They don't play real games. They don't put hours and hours of their time invested in a story and invested in a series. They don't care. They get them because they're free. I would love to see the number on how many people actually pay for games on mobile. And I bet you most of them are free to play, and then they use microtransactions because they get that adrenaline drip of goodness of playing the game, and they reach a level 187 and they need more energy, so they spend $3 or $4 on more blue gems or whatever the heck it is to give them more turns. I guarantee you that's a majority of mobile gaming. Meanwhile, on the Nintendo Switch, you have dedicated gamers. Most of the Nintendo Switch fanboys are old school. They love not only the experience of the video games, setup itself, story arc, art, mechanics, all of that stuff, but they also love the old stuff. Most Nintendo fans really, really like going back to the retro games. That's, where a lot of them, for them it's nostalgia. For some people, it's games they missed or never got to play. All of that can be found on the Nintendo Switch. Now, I'm not saying they shouldn't bring it over to like the PS4, PS5, X. Yeah, they should do that too. I'm a total fan of that. But I'm just saying, looking at a business model, I see the perfect home for these games. And you can wrap them all up 1 through 6, which is amazing. I know that the dev teams at Final Fantasy are working on just a million other things. I think there's an X3 that's being talked about. The Final Fantasy VII remakes are going up. We got DLCs from them that are 5 to 10 hours long. They're busy. I get it. People want to play these old games though. And there's an opportunity right here, and it's the perfect fit. And if you look how much money they could make. Like I say, I don't think it's crazy that they could get $30 a game. I really don't. I know it seems that way. You're hearing that. You're like, well, these are old games. These should be free. Yes, they should be. They should be on the online uh, virtual console. They should be on this stuff. But if they piecemealed it out, you would pay 20. You would pay 30 for them. So if they remaster them and bring them back out, yeah, you'll if you're a fan, even if you're not, let's be honest, so many of us work on that backlog. It just fits. I don't know why Square, Nintendo, so many of these companies just don't want money. We just want to give you our money. I can think of a number of Legend of Zelda games. At least I'm thinking in my head probably four, just right off the top of my head, that they could make $40-50 on if they just re-released it to the Switch. I would easily throw down for Twilight Princess, Ocarina of Time, Wind Waker. I would throw down on these Final Fantasy games, Mario RPG. It would break my wallet. My wife would kill me, but I would spend so much money on these things, and the companies themselves have to do very, very little work. And in this scenario, we actually have them already did the work. They re-released it or are re-releasing it. I believe 1 and 2 comes out on the 28th of this month. But they've already went through all that. It's done. And then they just don't port it over to the most perfect system for it? It makes no sense. And these aren't games that microtransactions are going to be a thing in. I don't believe. If they somehow if they poisoned the well with microtransactions, I don't even know how you would do that. But if they did, then that's a different story, and it's pretty gross. But I don't think that's the case. I think these are the same games that a lot of people played 2-3 decades ago, and yeah, they just left it out. We're not putting it on the biggest consoles that people are playing. We are chasing that dollar. Anyway, thanks a lot, guys. Take care of yourself and loved one. We'll see you later. Bye bye.